I was just talking about how hard it is to only talk for 30 minutes. So I'm going to reference the slides as I go through, but I want you to feel free to unmute and ask questions or to share any thoughts you have with regard to PBIS, ISF. Now, this training really is for two different purposes. One is if you are not familiar with PBIS and ISF and you want to get more information about it, then you're in the right place. And if you want to participate or if you want to talk about trainings that we offer as we move forward. The other purpose of this training is to just let you know what we can offer at KDE and how we partner with the regional co-ops and districts and schools and, you know, kind of where we fit in that puzzle. Also, if you are a PBIS school, or ISF school, and you have the framework implemented, but you are in need of a little bit of booster training or some sustainability type trainings, we're the people that you can come to, and we can offer those also. So with that being said, I'm one of 4 PBIS ISF consultants at KDE, and we are working under the School Climate Transformation Grant. And our work is crafted by that grant in the way it's written, but with all of those PBIS principles and features. But we're dedicated to providing free of charge training for districts and schools for all things PBIS and ISF, which is the Interconnected Systems Framework, under that MTSS umbrella, which is a multi-tiered systems of support. And within that, we offer, mental health supports for all at every single tier. And we also offer trauma-informed pieces to infuse into each tier, because we know that's so important, along with culturally responsive practices and that equity piece that we also know is so incredibly important. So that's a lot, but PBIS ISF is a framework. It's not a curriculum and it's not a initiative. It's just much more. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next couple of slides. We're crazy in education about acronyms, and so I'm going to throw even more out to you. Sometimes you may see PBIS referred to as SWPBIS, which means school-wide, but it's the same thing. We're going to talk about the important roles that a district team plays in the rollout of any PBIS implementation, along with the school team. And again, infusing that so important mental health component in each tier. So I want you to take just a second and read this slide. I'm sure you're familiar with the Cage Busting Leadership book, and I want to talk about that after you finish reading this. Okay, I think this is pretty impactful when we're talking about schools and about recouping that academic time that I know we all are worried about and we lose every single year when we're dealing with problem behaviors in an inefficient and ineffective way. So PBIS is all about setting up efficient and effective systems in order to recoup that academic time, which is so powerful. I want to share one resource with you. I apologize. I was going to try to drop it in the chat and I ran out of time, but you can contact me with any materials you need or anything that I've referenced and you want more information about. But so, when you're talking about implementing PBIS, it's so important to have buy-in. And if you're a new district, to, garner that buy-in in several different ways, or if you're a district that's already implemented PBIS, to sustain buy-in as you move forward. And there are a lot of really common things about PBIS, but there's a lot of research out there that tells us how much time we waste in dealing with those problem behaviors and how much money it costs us. So Maryland has a PBIS site, as most states do. And if you were to go to marylandpbis.org, there's a document on their website, and it used to be right on the front. I haven't looked at it for about 6 months, but it's called the Cost Benefit Analysis Worksheet. And it's a living document. And so you can pull it off and you can put the number of referrals you have, problem behavior referrals you have in, and then it's going to calculate how much lost academic time that means, how much lost administrative time that is, how much lost teacher time that is. And it calculates actually how much money it costs your school and your district when you're dealing with those problem behaviors inefficiently. So that's a great tool to use when you're trying to garner that that buy-in. And there are a lot of different things you can use also, all research-based out there that can tell folks in your setting that PBIS is something that you can incorporate all of your other initiatives within, and it's much more likely for you to have success, both academically and behaviorally. So I encourage you to look at that worksheet. Okay, so what is it? It's a system that we implement through the framework that actually changes the culture and climate. If you're a school or a district that has a good culture and climate, it can make it even better. It's all based on prevention, the thought that we need to go into any type of discipline system with prevention in mind and being proactive and teaching those behaviors. You want your kids to exhibit those pro-social behaviors. You want them to exhibit when they come to school, and teaching them the first couple of weeks of school what it looks like and sounds like, and then reinforcing it and reminders, frequent reminders throughout the school year, and then reteaching after any types of breaks. So it's really important, especially in this climate, I think, to have a PBIS framework in place, because then we can plan for teaching the kids after those long breaks or after a 6-month or a year break, you know, reteaching those skills we want our kids to be able to show us. It's also about acknowledging appropriate and positive behavior, and all of us like to be acknowledged for something we did well. And research tells us that adult attention is the most powerful reinforcer on the planet for kids. And so why not take that time to acknowledge those positive behaviors that they're engaged in to ensure that that's going to happen again and again. We're going to get to see that behavior over and over. And not to say we just ignore the problem behaviors, quite the opposite. We want you to be able to, or your staff, and I say staff because classified and certified need to be a part of your PBIS program. We want them to be able to acknowledge when a misbehavior happens and what to do about that. And so within that system, you set up that consistency throughout your building so that everyone is enforcing the rules or the expectations the way they're written for your school, and everyone is acknowledging inappropriate behavior too, and then giving consequences that really work. So a consequence that works is one that extinguishes problem behavior. So I like the example of, you know, I've been in education a really long time, and I've worked in alternative settings, and I've been an intervention coordinator. And, you know, I've seen those kids that I look at discipline data, and they've been in school suspension for 20 or 30 days in the school year. And so, you know, keeping in mind that if they've been in there that long in a school year, every time we give them an in-school suspension, we're reinforcing the behavior that's getting them in there. There's a reason why they want to be in that setting, and it's not extinguishing that problem behavior. So really becoming, you know, it's all about becoming a behaviorist or behavioral scientist, and every adult in your building can do that through training and through consistency and through support. And then developing a continuum of interventions from the most mild intervention up to writing an individualized behavior plan. But that's all within the tiers and within the framework. This is what it would look like if we were to draw it. And so it seems complex, but very simply, it's just about setting up those systems to support staff behavior. And we all know that every single school in Kentucky has probably a lot of things great going on with regard to PBIS. They may not call it that, but examining those systems that are working well and keeping those that are working well for us and giving us the desired outcomes, and doing away with or modifying the ones that aren't. Those practices are the ones that we establish through the framework that support student behavior. So that's your acknowledgement system. That's your lesson plans in teaching. And then data, because this is a data-driven decision-making model, and data is just as important as setting up those systems and those practices. And so every month, I mean, looking at your data frequently every month to guide all those decisions with regard to systems and practices. We're talking about building that effective environment and, you know, being proactive up front, not waiting for a misbehavior to happen. And, you know, really teaching kids those skills that when they leave our schools and our districts, that they can be people that contribute to our communities. And that's what we all want. So what happens when you implement positive behavior supports with fidelity? And I use that fidelity all the time because you have to implement it with fidelity. You have to implement it the way research says to implement it, and you're always going to get the outcomes. And the good news about this too is it doesn't matter which setting you're in. We are in alternative schools. We are in day treatment centers. We're in juvenile justice centers. We are in Kentucky School for the Blind. We are in preschool through 12th grade settings. And so, and we've known through the effective schools research that's probably 50 years old or older, that if we implement PBIS the way the science tells us we're to implement it, we get the results that we want every single time. So we're talking about tiers, and I know you all are familiar with this. We call the different tiers different things depending on which trainer you're talking with. But tier 1 is universal, and that's for all kids, and that also includes classroom strategies. Tier 2 is for those kids that need a little bit of extra support. And, you know, it's just giving them more of those things that you have in place with tier 1 until that they can show you proficiency. And then tier 3 is more individualized. Now, I know you're familiar with this triangle also. One thing I do want to point out is that we never separate academics from behavior, academic systems from behavioral systems, because we have to have both. And the academic curriculum needs to be rich, and it needs to have pieces for all kids to succeed. Same way it is, the same way it is with our behavioral systems. So we can't separate those, and we need to be doing well to manage both our academic systems and our behavioral systems. So some of those elements, you know, just setting that common approach to discipline, and, you know, what do you want your schools, your students, your school, your community to look like? What is that common language? Establishing a team, because it's all run through a teaming process, and it needs to be a rich and an efficient teaming process that moves you forward. The team's not the solely responsible for PBIS implementation, but they're important, they're a driving force. And then establishing a database decision-making system. Well, we all already have some form of that. But using it effectively so we can really be looking at what's going on in our building and what needs to be improved upon and what's going well so we can celebrate. Most schools have already set school-wide expectations for behavior. They're those 3 to 5 global expectations that you want the kids to model. And those expectations aren't just for students, they're for everyone in the building. all staff and all students. And then actually developing those lesson plans to teach those expectations and what they look like in the hallway, in the cafeteria, on the athletic field, et cetera. And then an acknowledgement system, because it's important that we acknowledge appropriate behaviors, because we're ensuring that those appropriate behaviors will happen again and again, because adult attention is the most powerful reinforcer on the planet, and the kids are going to get attention one way or another. And so we need to acknowledge them for those behaviors that they're showing, those pro-social positive behaviors that we want to see. But also, it's incredibly important to develop a systematic approach to dealing with those problem behaviors. And what would that look like? Again, database decision-making is important in that system that you design, along with a continuum of consequences, and giving the staff in your building tools to respond to inappropriate behavior, which creates consistency across the whole building. And then also making sure that everything we're doing every month, we're monitoring it, we're asking those questions about, did it go well, or do we need to change it? And then moving forward. So everybody, you know, it's hard work, and we sometimes need to sell this, whether you're engaging for the first time in training, or you want a sustainability training or a booster training because you've been implementing PBIS in the past, and you just need to kind of shore up your systems and practices. But we always need to tell those folks what's in it for them. I mean, why would they support this when it's such hard work, and their time is so valuable, and there are so many things that they're responsible for? Well, first of all, consistency. It creates that consistency across the building, so that if a child misbehaves in the cafeteria, the response to that misbehavior is kind of the same as it is in the classroom, or as it is on the playground or on the athletic field. The other part of that is that PBIS RTI is within PBIS, and everyone's familiar with that. Another thing is that for our kids that are at risk, those kids that take up 90% of our time, it helps them to be more successful, and we can deal with them more effectively because we have those supports in place. Classroom management, even if you don't attend any of our classroom strategies trainings, you know, that just starts to spill over into the classroom with the teachers, and classroom strategies become more strong, and they're more effective and more efficient, and you have more time to teach. I can't say this enough, that as this has been morphing and growing, and you know, we address needs of all the kids in the building, that you will have mental health supports for tier 1, 2, and 3 within PBIS. And also, you know, including staff wellness, because you all know, I mean, I know all of us as employers, or not employers, but employees, how hard this has been this last 2 years. And so it's not just to make sure that our kids are okay, but building in those supports to make sure our staff are too. And so we talk a lot about integrating PBIS with ISF. And this is a slide that talks a little bit about how to do that, but within our trainings, we go in depth with that. But, you know, even with integrating these supports, we always focus first on prevention. Okay. Now, we know when districts or schools are successful because there are certain things that we see with them. First of all, that there are resources that are committed to PBIS framework. There's a clear action plan, and we're always about making the smallest change to get the biggest bang for our buck. It's all about efficiency and effectiveness, and it's all about working with the resources we have. It's not about hiring an expert to come in, or hiring an extra person that has got that behavioral expertise, when we know that we can leverage the experience and expertise we have within our building. And I'm not just talking about our special ed teachers, or if we have a mental health professional in the building. I'm talking about all adults in the building. We know that most every adult in a school can bring something to the PBIS framework. And if we reach out to the resources we already have, then we're ahead of the game. You know, we talk a lot about sustainability, and, you know, it is important to build the different features in to sustain your work, because it's sad when a school or a district does just a whole lot of work for years but hasn't attended to the sustainability part of it, and then staff change or faculty change or administrators change, and all this great work just goes away again, and sometimes they have to start all over again. So that's important. Now, this is, again, just a snapshot of what it might look like when you're implementing your training with us. This is what we do. We focus on the leadership team, regardless if it's the district or at a school level, and we give training to the team. So you don't need 20 substitutes or however you may, you know, have to cover people's jobs when they're training with us. It's team led. And the team actually provide mini PDs when they're implementing, and there should be a coach at the district level and at the school level. That's very important because that moves the process along too. Now, I talked about braiding initiatives. So what this means in a nutshell, because I know I only have 8 minutes left, but you know, it's about the framework, and everything that happens in that building falls within that framework. So we're talking about academics, we're talking about response to intervention, we're talking about trauma-informed practices, we're talking about social emotional learning. All of that should be braided in to our PBIS framework. And so hallmarks to creating an efficient program with not integrating only RTI, but integrating everything into the framework. And we use this document, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, but it should be used about once a year, maybe once every other year, to look at committees. What are those committees that are existing in your building? And is their purpose and outcome on track? What's the target group? Is there staff involved? Is it related to your school improvement plan? You know, if it's not, maybe, you know, that's a committee that needs to be either done away with or needs to be collapsed into another committee. So you may have a PBIS committee or leadership team, and you find that your culture and climate committee, even your RTI committee or your behavior committee should be within that team. And so it's about, like I said, leveraging your resources, using what you have in the building, and make it work more efficiently for you. And so these are just a little bit more information about this slide. Then these next slides are the critical features that expand on the graphic that I showed you earlier. So for time's sake, I'm just going to kind of scoot through that. Okay, so we partner with our regional co-ops, and they're wonderful, and we partner with them for training purposes and for developing our coaching cadres and things like that. But these are all of the other things that we can offer you too. And we have a lot of flexibility, the four of us, within this grant. And so first of all, we have a winter flyer that's on the KDE website. And it's got all of our trainings that are upcoming, and you can register right there. If you want, reach out to me and I'll share the flyer with you. But also, if you're a district person and you want to know anything about any more of these trainings, please reach out to us. We've got a long list. We've got some nice trainings that we can offer, and we can also offer them so that they're district specific to you, so that if the time and the dates we have for some of our upcoming statewide trainings aren't convenient for you, we can certainly come to your district and offer those things at a district or a school level for you. We can offer them virtually. We are going to stick to some virtual trainings with the shorter ones, but the longer ones we'd like to do in person. So if you haven't trained with PBIS before and you're interested, I would first ask you to reach out to one of us and we'll set up a conversation to have. The nice thing about all this too, and that's why it works so well, is that you all can kind of got a lot of leeway. You can shape what you want your trainings to look like within your districts and within your schools. But we've got the readiness, the awareness, the district team training, and the coach and administrator trainings. The tier 1 trainings are three-hour chunks of content. And then for each one of those days, we call them day 1, 2, and 3, but for each one of those days, there's about 3 hours for each day of team time and planning. And we've done that virtually in the past. We really like to do it in person, but if it's something that just can't be done in person right now, we can certainly set that up for virtually. Also, we use these fidelity measures that can be found on PBISapps.org, and that's so important too. So the TFI is that tiered fidelity inventory, and it's all of the features for tier 1, 2, and 3, and you can assess where you are. So for tier 1, there are 15 features, and at the end of every year, sometimes in the fall, your team will take this, and it's very quick and easy to fill out right online, and it gives you nice graphs and reports, but it tells you which feature you may need to work on and which ones are fully in place, and it helps you with action planning as you move forward. That's also going to be a big part because we're rolling out a recognition system this year, and so you're going to need to complete a TFI in order to apply for recognition. You can locate your school's account on PBIS.org, and it's free of charge. The only thing is, if you want me to activate your account, you'll need to reach out to either me or to one of the other consultants, and we can certainly do that. But we also have trainings on how to use that also. We have additional support that you can request. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to give you a reminder. We've got about 2 more minutes in this session. And when this one concludes, the next session will start at 1:50. Just a reminder to participants.
Okay, thank you very much. So, working with us, there's a slide for information right here. And then a couple more slides for, just for our information if you want to work with us. And then Rachel Jenga, she is our training person. She's the one that sets everything up. She's also a consultant, but you can certainly contact her and she'll tell you which consultant you would work with, or it may even be her. So 2 minutes left. I made it. Yay. Do we have any questions? I'll give you about a minute for questions, or you can pose it in the chat. Please feel free to reach out to me, lea.brown@education.ky.gov. And I thank you so much for your time. We've got 1 minute so that the other folks can get organized and get started. Okay, that's all, folks.